Babies without incubators, huddled in blankets for warmth. What parents call a war on children. These images shocked the world last year when Israel's siege of Al-Shifa hospital began. This is what Gaza's largest hospital looked like. Originally built in 1946 during the British rule, it had survived multiple wars and Israeli attacks. Israel has now ripped apart what medics used to call Gaza's beating heart. When World Health Organization finally reached the hospital, it found an empty shell, shallow graves, and the stench of rotting bodies. Horrifying details of what happened to 700 patients, 400 health workers, and 3,000 displaced people. Soldiers posted videos around Al-Shifa of them firing without any resistance. Since then, they've reduced almost all hospitals in Gaza and effectively the healthcare system to ashes.
Concrete intelligence.
Israel's military propaganda published videos to show the hospital as an alleged Hamas command center, but these videos were quickly debunked by Palestinians and even journalists taken there by the Israeli army. More doubt on who placed and arranged what Israeli military has presented as evidence. This is what the military video showed before selected journalists were taken on tour.
There is an AK-47.
The number of guns in the MRI room increased, and they can be seen as being arranged differently. The Israeli army also deleted an earlier post which admitted it sees ambulances and hospitals as, quote, legitimate targets. Dozens of patients were killed at Al-Shifa hospital. Israeli forces not only ransacked and destroyed the hospital, but also abducted doctors, nurses, and anyone who broke the information blackout about atrocities. This is Dr. Adnan al-Borsh, who continued to tell the world what the Israeli army was doing. He refused Israeli orders to move south and instead went to assist at the Indonesian hospital after the destruction of Al-Shifa. Described by his wife as a light over life, the famous surgeon was kidnapped. His family seeks justice for his torture and killing under Israeli custody. Al Jazeera's 27-year-old correspondent Ismail Al-Ghul was also killed. He too refused to heed Israeli forces' threats and continued to inform the world about what was happening at Al-Shifa hospital. 14 months on, Israel's siege, bombardment and killing has only intensified. And the sprawling Shifa complex of buildings and courtyards is unrecognizable.
This is what used to be the emergency department, and as you can see, it's totally destroyed.
Doctors say Israel's strategy was to eliminate it from existence, but the echo of defiance from Gaza's iconic hospital is still alive, as hundreds of medics from all over the world continue to remember and demand justice for their colleagues. Osama bin Javed, Al Jazeera.
If you go to Google, if you search UN News, the first advertisement is United Nations bias, agency's bias. It's from a Israeli governmental website here, as I showed you. Listed all kinds of UN agencies, how they bias against Israel. Any respond to this?
I think we've been talking at great length for many months about the objectivity of UN agencies. We're going about our work without favor to any side, and this is something that we do throughout conflict zones. And as you know, in many conflict zones, this or that party may allege us of bias, but we try scrupulously to present the evidence as we get it.
Would you consider this a misinformation campaign from the Israeli authority against the UN?
I will leave you to judge for yourself.
I'm amazed how journalism sort of takes one party in a very dirty war as a good source. Don't believe the Israeli propaganda. Don't believe Hamas propaganda. Don't believe Hezbollah propaganda. There is a reason Israel is denying PBS and all other independent journalism in the world access to Gaza. They don't want independent witnesses. We who are there, who are independent, neutral, impartial, all UN agencies, all Red Cross agencies, all non-governmental agencies, American, European, etc., we are unanimous in that Israel is deliberately starving the population and having an indiscriminate, excessive warfare that are killing thousands of women and children. There is no doubt of this has been documented. Israel is not telling the truth.
Last night, my friend, the member for Blackburn, and my friend, the member for Perry Barr, attended a film showing by Al Jazeera at a cinema nearby here. And that film was of raw, very raw footage of the behavior of Israeli soldiers in Gaza, about destruction of life, and about the appalling death toll of children, particularly across Gaza. And it showed soldiers cheering when they'd managed to destroy an entire Palestinian village. It showed pictures that were devastatingly realistic in the horror they showed of the torture against Palestinian prisoners being held in Israeli prisons. And after that, we had a question and answer session with a number of people, lawyers, medical people, and so on. And the doctor who was there described how when she tried to enter Gaza to act as a doctor, she was restricted to one suitcase. She was told she had to bring in 3 days' water supply. She was told she had to have her own personal security. She was told she had to have a car and a driver with her at all times in order just to undertake her work as a doctor. And she said there are very few hospitals working in Gaza. The conditions are appalling and abominable. And many doctors are now not working in Gaza anymore because they simply cannot get in, because Israel controls all access and exit to Gaza. And so the small number of very brave and wonderful doctors that were working there are now being forced to go elsewhere. And so what this film showed was the way in which Israel's occupation has been directed entirely towards the destruction of Palestinian life, Palestinian buildings, schools, roads, hospitals, and everything else. I've never forgotten going to Beach Primary School in Jalabia refugee camp many years ago. Wonderful school, wonderful place, wonderful children. And with joy, these children sat down and read, through translation, the poetry they'd written about their lives, their hopes, and what they wanted to achieve. And then we went onto the roof of the school, and you could see the fence on one side, and not that far away you could see the sea. And to the north you could see Ashkelon. And you could feel the sadness in their voices as they said, we're never going to be able to go anywhere. We're never going to be able to travel anywhere. We are forever prisoners in this school and our homes. But at least at that time, they had homes and a school. I've seen the footage and seen the films. The school is totally destroyed. Many of those children that I met who were so happy in those days are now deceased. Famine is there in Gaza. It is registered as a famine around the world. Polluted water, inadequate food, inadequate medical supplies, absolutely appalling situation. And so we have to, yes, demand all the aid that we can to go into Gaza. Obviously, we would do that for any people anywhere in the world. But when there are over 40,000 recorded deaths and possibly 100,000 more bodies waiting to be discovered under the rubble, the answer has to be a political one. Why are we still supplying arms to Israel, knowing full well that those arms, in contravention of ICJ rulings, are actually being used to bomb civilian targets in Gaza? War crimes are being committed before our very eyes on our televisions every night. It's up to our government, to show that if it believes in international law, it would halt the supply of weapons to Israel, because it knows full well those weapons are being used to destroy human life in breach of all aspects of international humanitarian law.
2 days ago, the Israeli authorities occupied this cafe and expelled its rightful owner, Mohammed Castiro, from the land that his family has owned since 1954.
The soldier came and they tell me, we came to get you out and take your place.
The cafe was taken over using a law that allows to expropriate property which was allegedly owned by Jews before 1948. A law that coexists with a law that allows to expropriate property of Palestinians who were expelled in 1948. About a dozen other businesses are facing eviction on this street alone.
This is what I have. I spent all my life here. I remember myself a child about 10 years play in this place. I spent all my life here. and there is no place can I go.
The Israeli legal system in general is set up in a way to maximize the expropriation of the land from Palestinians and in order to pass it down to settlers. Cafe will be transferred to settlers, and this is just another step towards the ethnic cleansing of Jerusalem.
What can I do? This is the Israeli law. This is the Israeli law.
I want to add one sentence. The Israeli Prime Minister came here today and said that Israel is surrounded by those who want to destroy it, an enemy. We're here, members of a Muslim Arab committee mandated by 57 Arab and Muslim countries. And I can tell you here, very unequivocally, all of us are willing to, right now, guarantee the security of Israel in the context of Israel ending the occupation and allowing for the emergence of a Palestinian state, independent state, along the efforts that we all agree. He is creating that danger because he simply does not want the two-state solution. And if he does not want the two-state solution, can you ask the Israeli officials, what is their end game? Other than just wars and wars and wars. I'm telling you, all of us in the Arab world here, we want a peace in which Israel lives in peace and security, accepted, normalized with all Arab countries in the context of ending the occupation, withdrawing from Arab territory, allowing for the emergence of an independent, sovereign Palestinian state on June 4, 1967, lines with occupied Jerusalem as capital. That is our narrative. That is, and we will guarantee Israel's security in that context. Can you ask Israelis what's their narrative other than I'm going to continue to go to war, I'm going to kill this and kill that and destroy this and this that? The amount of damage that Israeli government has done, 30 years of efforts to convince people that peace is possible, this Israeli government killed it. The amount of dehumanization, hatred, bitterness will take generations to navigate through. So ultimately the question is, we want peace. And we've laid out a plan for peace. Ask any Israeli official, what is their plan for peace? You'll get nothing because they're only thinking of the first step. We're going to go destroy Gaza, inflame the West Bank, destroy Lebanon. And after that, they have no plan. We have a plan. We have no partner for peace in Israel. There is a partner for peace in the Arab world.
בראש על להמשיך הלאה לנקודה אחרת חדשה.
הלוואי.
יש איזה משהו בראש?
לא מגלה לך את כל הסודות.
המפעיל עם ניסיון, זה צריך להיות מפעילים ממש עם ניסיון, עבודה מסובכת. מעולה, אני אשלח לך, תכף אני אצא מעזה, אני אשלח לך טפסים שאתה צריך לחתום עליהם וזהו, תגיד לי, אתה בר גיוס גם או שאתה יכול לבוא רק בתור אזרח? אתה עובד מול המנהל עבודה, מול אביעד. כל הכלים הם שלנו. כל התיאומים של כמה, למה, איפה, איך, זה אביעד. הוא יהיה שם רוב הימים. יש ימים שאני מחליף אותו, אבל בדרך כלל הוא יהיה שם. זה משמרות, זה לא לפי שעות. זה אין כאילו נכנסים בבוקר, יוצאים בערב, אין איך לצאת משם באמצע היום. זה רק עם הבטחה וכאלה, זה לא... בקיצור, אם יש משהו דרמה, יכולים להוציא אותך SOS, אבל זה רק אם יש איזשהו אירוע חריג שאתה חייב לצאת, דחוף, משהו כאילו קריטי. סתם ככה אי אפשר לצאת באמצע. אבל את כל ההתחלה תעשה מולי, את כל אתה מתחיל תהיה מולי, וכשאתה מתחיל, אחרי זה כבר תהיה מול אביעד. ביום הראשון עדיין תהיה מולי, ואיך שאתה כבר בשטח ביום הראשון כבר תחבור לאביעד וזהו.
וזכרת את אדוני אלוהיך, כי הוא נותן לך כוח לעשות חי. רפיח. באנו על מנת להרוס! משק עפר עובדים עם הבאגרים בתוך רפיח. אנחנו פה כבר 3 ימים ויש לנו שנה קדימה להמשיך ולא לעצור. ראש משק עפר אלון אלגלי איתנו בכבודו ובעצמו הגיע.
נעלה.
מחר הוא מגיע להוריד להם את המסגד. שיהיה לנו בהצלחה ובשורות טובות.
I'm well aware of the definition of genocide, and that is why I've never described this and referred to it as genocide.
As an international lawyer, I thought the comments of the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, were unhelpful. This matter is actually currently before the International Court of Justice in a case that South Africa has brought against Israel with the support of many intervening states. And there have also been numerous statements by Israeli officials at the highest levels indicating genocidal intent.
אנחנו בני האור, הם בני החושך, והאור ינצח את החושך.
אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם.
Now, while I understand that the Prime Minister doesn't want to get into the details or take a position, his comments could be read as implying that it categorically cannot be genocide, when in fact the issue is very much live.
Are you saying Hassan Nasrallah had agreed to a ceasefire just moments before he was assassinated?
He agreed, yes. We agreed completely. Lebanon agreed to ceasefire, but consulting with the Hezbollah, the speaker, Mr. Berry, consulted with Hezbollah, and we informed the Americans and the French that what happened. And they told us that Mr. Netanyahu also agreed on the statement that was issued by both presidents.
Okay.
Parce que depuis 1 an, il y a un génocide qui est en cours. Et en France, on a une bonne idée, on va jouer au foot avec les génocidaires. En fait, les présidents de la République française en vie. Sarkozy, Hollande et Macron. Les 3 présidents de la République sont présents aujourd'hui dans ce stade. C'est lamentable, c'est honteux, c'est lamentable. Il y a 40 000 morts, 50 000 morts, 100 000 morts. On ne sait même pas le nombre de morts. Et on nous dit que le drapeau palestinien ne doit pas être utilisé par-ci ou par-là. Ça, c'est de l'intimidation pour la population. C'est juste de l'intimidation pour la population. Ils sont sionistes, certes, mais ils sont islamophobes. Que ce soit les politiques, que ce soit les journalistes, que ce soit les médias, ils sont islamophobes. Amsterdam, on a eu des hooligans qui sont arrivés d'un pays fasciste, d'un pays génocidaire, d'un pays où il y a l'apartheid. Ils sont arrivés ici et ils se sont exprimés comme des fascistes, Ouais, il a suffi de leur montrer un petit peu le drapeau palestinien et ça a déclenché chez eux des réactions complètement. Donc tout ça, maintenant, on le sait. La population d'Amsterdam s'est défendue.
Names that we put into the embassy.
And just now got the money. It's more than £1 million. It's a lot of money. And then and now I got the money. So from Israel. So it's not physical. Yeah, it's improvement. And then and now
I had it in your bag.
Israel is once again rejecting global calls for a ceasefire. But this time they're not for Gaza. No, they're for Lebanon, where Israel has now launched a violent and reckless escalation in their almost year-long crossfire battle with Hezbollah. Israel, of course, took that crossfire to a whole new level last week when they made hundreds of pagers suddenly explode across Lebanon after planting explosives in them, injuring thousands and killing a dozen people, including 2 children and 4 healthcare workers. Not only did Israel then continue to set off even more explosives in Lebanon in what they claimed was the targeting of Hezbollah fighters, but this past Monday they went even further, launching the most horrific and deadly airstrikes in Lebanon yet, killing even more civilians and overwhelming the country's hospitals. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told Israel's military to continue fighting on with, quote, full force as they prepare for a potential ground invasion and continue to launch deadly strikes deep inside of Lebanon. So, as Israel engages in a new wave of blatant propaganda to try and justify the spilling of even more Arab blood, here are the 5 things that they're not telling you about their horrific assault on Lebanon. The 5 things you need to know to cut through the BS. Number 1, most of the attacks have been from Israel, not Hezbollah. Despite what Israel wants you to believe, this is not a case of a besieged Jewish state suddenly defending itself after showing restraint for months and months. No, since the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah began on October the 8th, Israel has carried out 82% of all the attacks between the two sides, according to ACLAD, a very respected non-profit monitoring group, which has even been funded by the US State Department and the German government in the past. Oh, and those numbers don't even include the pagers and walkie-talkies that blew up and killed people, or even the huge numbers of Israeli strikes from this past week that killed huge numbers of people. So can we please stop talking about Israeli restraint? Number 2, and on that note, Israel is killing Lebanese civilians. A lot of them. Just take a look at Monday, when Israel's airstrikes on Lebanon killed over 550 people, including 50 children and 94 women, marking Lebanon's deadliest day in decades. And no, the rest of those killed weren't a bunch of Hezbollah fighters either. According to Lebanese Health Minister Dr. Firas Abiad, the, quote, overwhelming majority, if not all, of the dead were civilians. And before people try to dismiss those numbers, as they do in Gaza when they say you can't trust a Hamas-controlled health ministry, the health ministry in Lebanon isn't controlled by Hezbollah, and Dr. Abiad is not affiliated with Hezbollah in any way. Don't just take it from me, take it from the super pro-Israel New York Times, which pointed out that Dr. Abiad is generally considered apolitical and won praise and prominence for his data-driven assessments during the coronavirus pandemic. Number 3, the human shields excuse really doesn't work in Lebanon. In a video message on Monday, Netanyahu told the Lebanese people that Hezbollah is apparently using them as, wait for it, human shields. How original. But just a few days before that, former Israeli military spokesman Jonathan Conricus actually went on Piers Morgan's show and told the viewers the exact opposite. Have a listen.
Here in Lebanon, until now, the situation is that Hezbollah has so far distinguished itself from civilian population. Israel has been able to take out more than 500 Hezbollah operatives and with absolutely minimal collateral damage in Lebanon. Hezbollah hasn't been hiding amongst civilians yet.
You heard that, right? Not only does Israel know Hezbollah is not using their civilians as human shields, but Conricus is even admitting that his government knows how to avoid, quote, collateral damage. So all the Lebanese civilians killed by Israeli airstrikes this week, I mean, I guess they were just for shits and giggles. Number 4, yet more genocidal rhetoric from Israel. The Israeli government wants you to believe that this is all about security, about protecting ordinary Israelis at the northern border, and that this war isn't against Lebanon or the people of Lebanon, but only against Hezbollah. The problem is that, like with Gaza, their ministers can't stop sounding genocidal in public when they talk about Lebanon. Just have a listen to what Israel's education minister, Yoav Kish, had to say on a live television interview just a few days ago.
אין שום הבדל בין חיזבאללה ללבנון. לבנון תושמד לאור כמו שהדברים... לא תהיה אותה לבנון כמו שהם מכירים. אני לא הולך להתעסק בצייד קטיושות של חיזבאללה. את המחיר לתוקפנות מאדמת לבנון תשלם מדינת לבנון.
Annihilated, he said. Annihilated. Yes, despite Netanyahu claiming that Israel's war is just against Hezbollah, Kish purposely made it clear, very clear, that in reality they're not even going to try and do targeted attacks on only Hezbollah. Their plan is to do to Lebanon what they've done to Gaza, plain and simple. Then there is Israel's Diaspora Affairs Minister, Amichai Chikli, who took to Twitter and claimed that, quote, Lebanon, even though it has a flag and even though it has political institutions, does not meet the definition of a country. How's that for genocidal? Lebanon isn't even a real country, apparently. Sounds like Vladimir Putin talking about Ukraine. Chikli went on to propose kicking Lebanese citizens, the Shia ones, out of parts of southern Lebanon and turning those parts into, quote, buffer zones, which would be controlled by the Israeli military, and which we know is just a polite code word for ethnic cleansing, followed by illegal Israeli settlements. Number 5, you want to talk about terrorism? It's Israel that's committing terrorism. Let's state the obvious. If Hezbollah set off a pager to explode in an Israeli grocery store or in an American hospital, there's no way that American senators like John Fetterman would have praised those attacks. They would be denouncing them as a new age of illegal terrorism. They'd be calling in the CIA. And yet just listen to what former CIA director Leon Panetta said about Israel's terrorist attack with exploding pagers.
The ability to be able to place an explosive in technology that is very prevalent these days and turn it into a war of terror, really, a war of terror. This is something new.
Is it terrorism?
I don't think there's any question that it's a form of terrorism.
Yes, even the former director of the CIA thinks Israel has opened a new Pandora's box when it comes to acts of terror. But hey, it's all just self-defense, right? Look, as we've seen with Gaza, no matter how horrific or violent or illegal Israel's attacks get, no matter how genocidal the Israeli rhetoric gets, the Israeli government will always find a way to play the victim card and get the uncritical and credulous support of both Western politicians and Western media. We already have over 40,000 dead in Gaza. To avoid a similar number in Lebanon in the coming days and weeks, all of us need to make sure that our leaders and influencers don't fall for the same pro-war propaganda again.